Welcome to Unspoken Conversations with Candace, where we talk openly about taboo topics in order to spark difficult and uncomfortable conversations, where we allow a safe place for anyone who has had trauma to be heard. Unspoken Conversations with Candace is about speaking your truth by using your voice because you matter. Each season on my podcast has its purpose, and for season 3, it is dedicated to all male survivors. I want to express my sincerest gratitude and acknowledge Jeff Chugum. He was curious to learn more about my podcast. Once I explained my vision for season 3, he wanted to help. Thank you, Jeff, for your sponsorship and support. Special thanks to Jesse Daso for assisting in the planning, logistics, and helping to invite guests for season 3. And last but not least, Neil Perek, my season 3 co host. Neil arranged to have Digimentors produce the show on a pro bono basis. Digimentors is helping me step out of my comfort zone by implementing video production. This form of media stream will be available broadly via our social media and our websites. I am extremely grateful to work with Neil and Digimentors. If you are interested in a high quality virtual or hybrid event, I encourage you to reach out to Digimentors. They work with nonprofits, higher education, corporate partners, international organizations, and others. It does not matter where you are based or how big or small your business is. They also do social and digital consulting, training, workshops, videography, recruitment, and more. Check out the links in the show notes for their contact information. Trigger warning. Before we begin, I want to make you aware that we are going to be talking about some very sensitive issues. All of our guests are male survivors of sexual assault. They will be sharing very personal stories about rape, incest, sexual abuse, and or assault. Please take a moment and make sure you are in an appropriate place to watch and or listen. Some of the descriptions may be explicit and have the potential of bringing up a range of emotions. It is more than okay for you to hit pause and come back to this later if you find that you need to. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Unspoken Conversations with Candace. I am so excited. This season 3 has been one amazing, fantastic, wonderful journey. I am so happy to have my co host here with me, Neil. Thank you for being on this journey with me for season 3, dedicated to all male survivors.
Of course, Candace. And thank you again so much for dedicating season 3 of your podcast, Unspoken Conversations with Candace, to male survivors. I can't believe it's been almost a year and a half, more than that, in fact, since our first conversation, since we first kind of dreamed up this season. And we have, heard an incredible number of stories over the course of this year, and we have one more episode to go after this one. I'll be coming back, and you and I will have a deeper dive looking back at everything we've learned over the
Yeah,
course of the year.
for sure. And I think, talking about people coming back, so I'm so happy because this guest has also come back. So Scott Kinderman, who is our guest today, was and pretty much kicked off my season 3, our season 3, right? He was episode 0. And so just to give the audience, the listeners, a little background about Scott is that he actually came into my private home studio earlier this year and just did an audio recording. And so I'm going to introduce him formally. And so just think about coming, when he spoke audio, and now this is a different type of production. So again, kudos to Digimentors for doing the video production where we're able to be across different media streams to do, this and spread this word broadly. So I'm going to introduce Scott. So Scott is a male survivor who
Hmm.
bravely opened up, as I mentioned, in season 3, and he was episode 0. And he spoke about his molestation and the story of that and the journey to overcoming, of course, what we call unfortunate circumstances that he went through, but he has become a thriver through all of this, and he is a loving father to his beautiful children. Scott currently works as the director of business intelligence at a local manufacturing company. He started volunteering with BeLEAF Survivors Incorporated as an advocate for survivors of sexual assault 3.5 years ago, and recently has joined the board of directors, which was in August of 22, and he serves as the treasurer. He created a collaboration between BeLEAF Survivors and NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness of Racine County, that led to the formation of a first of its kind peer led support group for survivors of sexual assault and abuse. He recently also joined the board of directors for WCASA, which is the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault, to advocate for survivors at a state level. This fall at this the 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 EndCAN walk together here in Milwaukee. He was honored. I was so happy to honor him with the EndCAN Unspoken Hero Award. And he received that award. I was just so proud of Scott. And that award was given to him because he broke his silence. He spoke publicly about his story as part of my season 3. And really, since then, has found his voice. And he always wants to credit me, but I believe every survivor has that power, and it takes one to help another one. And so I'm very honored that Scott credits me for allowing him to use his voice. And now his voice can be a difference for others. And he really has transformed and demonstrated, in my eyes, what a survivor is. And he is, again, doing so much for the survivor community. So, Scott, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I can't wait for him to join the conversation.
And here's Scott. I just wanted, before we take the picture off, I want to point out that this picture is actually with Lori Poland, who was a former guest on our show a few months back, and she is the executive director for NCAN,
CEO and co-founder.
the
Yes,
CEO and
CEO and
co-founder.
co-founder
My mistake.
of NCAN.
CEO and
No,
co-founder.
of
Uh,
NCAN.
and and
So
and
yes,
here's a shot of the award itself that Scott got. So Scott, congratulations on that, and we look forward to hearing more about your journey so far.
yes. So welcome, Scott. So again, like I said, I just want to give you all the credit for again being kind of kicking us off. Scott and I, when we recorded, so as everyone knows, I pre-recorded my episodes, and so Scott's episode kind of kicked off the series. And him and I planted the seed a little bit, and then lo and behold, I met Neil a week later, and then the rest is history. And that's how we landed here today. And so again, Scott, just thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing from the first conversation that we had to where you are today. That's what I want us to focus on is sharing your story in the fact of transformation. Lori Poland told me when we were at the walk this past fall, she said, Candace, when you're a victim and then you shift to survivor and then you become a thriver, but she says you have transcended. And when she said that to me, I kind of was like, "Really? You think so?" But she's like, "Look at everything that you're doing." And so I just want survivors out there, women and men, all of us, when we stand together, we're stronger together. We are louder than silence. And again, Scott, I'm so proud of how you've transformed in this year alone. And I'm just so honored for you to share your story with us about that transformation and what you've done in this last year with everything, with you speaking out publicly and coming out with your story.
Neil, Candace, thank you very much for having me. It has been an amazing time since you and I first talked back for episode 3 or season 3, episode 0. There has been so much that has occurred. And to be perfectly honest, when we sat down and first talked, this was new, and nothing that I'm about to talk about had actually even come to fruition, because at that point, my daughter had only just accepted the position with Planned Parenthood. There was no transitions I had taken, but since that moment, what has happened? Well, for starters, I'm still an advocate with BeLEAF Survivors. I go to the hospital. I meet with, if there are survivors who come to the emergency room, I am there for them. But I stepped up, and after my daughter left, I chose to see if I could join the board of directors for BeLEAF, and I stepped into that, and that was proved. And actually, I think you and I joined at the exact same time. And how did we end up both on the executive committee, and you as vice president, me as treasurer? And it's it 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 has started a journey that just it's taking on a life of its own. It really has. I mean, if I were to step through everything that's occurred since then, stepped onto the board, and in doing the board retreat that we had, a recognition that there was a dire need in our community. For as much as BeLEAF Survivors did and does for survivors, there we discovered they had a waiting list for people for their free services and the therapy and the counseling. That at the time was just this. It was like 70 people. It's a and I was devastated to hear that, because it meant that there are people who have just gone through one of the worst possible experiences in their life, now had to be re-traumatized every single day because they were going to wait 6 months, 9 months for the ability to just get in and see the therapist and to begin their healing journey. They can feel so alone at the time. It was what could we do that would make a difference? And again, my daughter came to the rescue on that. Recommended, say, hey, we did a training with NAMI. You should reach out and talk to them. Well, NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they had a Racine County chapter. So I reached out, and I said, hey, I have this idea. And it really wasn't that hard of a sell, but NAMI was going through their own startup again after COVID. So many things got pushed aside with COVID. And they were a little hesitant at first, but by the middle of our conversation, they were like, I like your idea. And it's like, are you willing to do these steps that they needed to make it happen? And I said, yes. So completely serious, within 2 weeks of our meeting, I was doing their training to be a co-facilitator, and was joined by Christina Trinidad, also from the board. And we launched the first of its kind peer-led support group for survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault in Racine. And we launched it in the month of April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And it's now a resource that's available that did not exist previously. So stepping into that was amazing, and creation of something new to offer to survivors that, it's not therapy, but it's meant as a resource that I'm struggling, I'm having a hard day, I'm having a hard week. This is what's present for me. How have you and others in the group coped with it and worked through it? And I'm proud to say it exists now. I mean, in fact, it meets the second and fourth Fridays of every single month. And it's a dedication, being in NAMI, if you're familiar with them, they have you have to be a peer in order to facilitate. So that is, and I'm a peer, obviously, and the ability to speak with them to make a difference for them.
And Scott, can I just say, I want to say and just acknowledge the fact that you answered a call of action. Like, that's what you did. You saw a need and you wanted to find a solution. You knew how important this was. You know what it's like to feel maybe alone and just kind of, not being able to talk to someone about it, and just that waiting game. And that was something eye-opening, I believe, that we did discuss at the retreat. And so for you to take and answer the call of action, that is huge. And that's kind of what Scott with me and Neil, that's what we've done, is I answered his call of action, and that's how we became aligned. And so again, I believe when you answer the call and you know that there's a reason and there's importance behind it, the impact of the change and the impact that you're having on so many survivors' lives is just, it's amazing. And it's a testimony. Also, I think because it's part of your therapy, it's also part of your healing journey. And just as Neil and I have spoken on every single episode, he's along as my co-host, but I learn from him. He's learning from me. We are learning together, and every guest always helps us to heal more. within ourselves. And I think that's just the beauty of, again, when I call survivorship, is when we stand together, we are louder than that silence. So thank you for answering that call. So that was huge. That was huge. And I think you've also now joined, so BeLEAF, you're on the board of directors for BeLEAF. So that was step
correct.
one. And then now the NAMI, being a peer facilitator, but you've also now with Wakaza, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about that journey, because again, that's just taking it another level to another call of action, which I think has a lot to do with the legal aspect or state laws, correct?
Yes, that is correct. There was I signed up for the newsletter as a member of BeLEAF because they were the state organization that it's the coalition of sexual assault service providers in the state of Wisconsin. I'm on their mailing list, and I got an email that said, hey, we're looking for people who are maybe interested in joining our board. It took some thought. It took some, did I feel, I think we can all speak to imposter syndrome once in a while, are we genuinely the people that can do this, and again, my daughter, a little bit of coaxing or just saying, Dad, you can do this. I know you can. I put my hat in the ring, had an interview, and found out, yes, I was elected. And this was really cool because the entire membership of the coalition had to vote to approve my being there. So that's validating. I mean, some of the work, it means that there is a recognition, as you just said, of the work that has been done. And so, yes, as of October 1st of 2023, I started a 2-year term with Wakaza on the board. And I feel in that role, I wish to step it up to be, I want to add, not only I advocated with BeLEAF locally, I feel it's important to advocate for survivors at a state level. Wakaza provides, what they call TA, technical assistance. So any of the sexual assault organizations can reach out to Wakaza, say, hey, we need help with this, or we need training on this. And that's what they offer. But they also have a legislative action arm that allows working to change the laws or creating an environment where sexual assault, sexual abuse is no longer present. It is changing the context of how we live our lives so that there is not, I think we all work for the day that our organizations are no longer needed. And that is, so I've been able to step into that with Wakaza. I also, I think one of the more, speaking with you is part of it, but not long after I spoke with you, I also was able to speak with, actually it was October of last year, timing, but I've been able to speak with young men in correctional facilities to be able to work, share with them that it's okay as a male survivor to speak to this. The bravado does not have to be there. And it was a chance I spoke with like 50 young men that were in their care, and it was powerful. I have to give a lot of respect. There are reasons they are in a correctional facility, but they were all very respectful. And I actually toned down my talk to them originally, where there was like 3 or 4 things. I don't want to include this, and then maybe I don't think it was really necessary, or maybe detracted from what I thought I was trying to say. But I give those guys credit because the questions that they asked me answered every single one of the things that I thought about taking out of my talk. They asked the questions that brought it back in, and they were amazed. They were very respectful. They asked wonderful questions. And I know what they call a PSU, which is a professional services unit, which is who work with the mental health of the people in their care. They were present, and I know at least 8 or 9 people walked up to where they were sitting afterwards, and I'm hoping it would break a generational trauma cycle.
Scott, I want to interject. I just want to, all of this, I mean, all of this experience working with NAMI, with Wakaza, with BeLEAF, all of this happened after your conversation with Candace earlier this year?
Candace, you showed me I have a voice. And
I'm gonna
Thank
start
you.
crying, you guys. Stop. I'm
All
We're
gonna
gonna
right.
start
start the
crying.
club,
Yeah.
Scott. I mean,
Uh-huh.
this
Yeah.
is
Let's together. Come on. Come on.
together. Ready? I mean, this is
The
it's to
Uh,
me. It's really. I mean, it's powerful
Mhm,
because if you think about, um, let's take a step back, right? Um, Candace has been doing this work for 2 years in terms of the podcast, but longer with the book. She touched so many people with the book. She touched so many people with her advocacy work.
mhm,
Um, and I want to make sure people see the book that she put out
mhm,
because it really started the ball rolling.
mhm,
And we all have a part to play in this. And it's nobody is really responsible for it or owning it or kind of they have get all the credit.
mhm,
But if you just think about it for a moment, you know, um, to have her be in that position for the call to action she referenced earlier when she met me, I spoke on a panel of male survivors, and I
mhm.
asked the women in the audience to make space for men to
Yes.
give us help us find our voice, to help us um, include us on panels and that type of thing. And I know she had had similar conversations with you around the same time, so
Mhm,
there's that confluence of ideas. And then you have that first audio podcast. We launched the video version. You go on this journey and start, participating with all these organizations. I go on to help co-host these sessions, and
mhm,
I've said all along, if people have watched earlier episodes, if nobody else watches these episodes, it's been an incredible journey, incredible learning experience for me. It's like a grad level seminar in
mhm.
survivorship, in thrivership. May not be a
Yes.
word, but
It is
thriving.
now.
It is now.
it is
Mhm,
now.
Um, and it's really great. Candace mentioned it, but just think about how we've supported each other. I mean, we were all giving
mhm,
Candace credit earlier, but we're all coming together at a particular moment in time to build off of one another, to grow with each other, to support each other. And that's powerful.
It is so powerful, and that's why I'm crying because it means so much to me because again, when I think about when I wrote the book and those 3 years of reliving the trauma as a survivor, you never forget, right? I have
mhm.
forgiven. It has been hard. I've taken the advocacy training, and now
Yes.
when I've been well versed in what these child sexual assault laws are, I was pissed. Like I was angry and
Mhm,
I was like wanting to just go save my younger self at a different type of level to know like
mhm,
wow, I was violated over and over and over again. And these laws that are supposed to protect children, right? And there were signs, there were warning signs, and I talk about
mhm,
all this in my book so openly and candidly and raw and real. And I don't go into the graphic detail. I go more into the emotional and what was hurting me on the inside and how I was like, rebelling and what I was doing to thrash out. And, I was rebelling and just promiscuous, all the things, the warning signs that are there for just all I wanted was someone
mhm,
to ask me, be direct, sit me down, have a conversation with me. And none of that happened. And that's fine. It didn't happen. But now, like reflecting as an adult, thinking about my younger self, it's just like, man, I just coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? But this is why I do this work. This is why it's so important to me. This is why I get up every day, even though it's hard. And again, I
mhm,
fight imposter syndrome every day when I see others doing, am I doing enough? Should I do more? But then I have to just take a pause and I just have to remind myself and give myself grace and say, nope, I'm putting good information out there. I am working with other survivors. I am in great alignment with someone like Neil and Scott that's going to support me and I'll support them. And I know who my go-tos are, right? If I'm struggling, if I'm having a problem, I know my circle is strong and that's what I'm so grateful for is the people that I've met
mhm,
along my journey and the support that I've received. And so just I want to thank both of you again, Neil, for going on this journey with me, for Digimentors, for doing all of the support on the production aspect, and Scott for planting the seed, for you and Scarlett to come into my studio. That was the first time I did a three.
Yeah,
We were
three.
as three
Yeah.
of us in the studio.
Yep.
I had bought a whole new setup and everything, and that was the first time where it's like I kind of was like this. I could do more with this. So It has come full circle, and I have that chapter, full circle blessings. And I am on the journey of a second book, which will be Life After Unspoken, where I'll talk about all of the things that have transformed within my life, right? The transcending experiences that I've had that I've been blessed upon, like the Thrive Award, the Hope Shining Blue event that we all attended, that we were there cheering on, helping me to thrive in my moment and celebrate survivors, because
Yes.
we are so much more than what happened to us. We are so much
Yes.
more than that story. And this right here is a testimony to where we are thriving, we're transcending. And so Neil is showing the pictures of the Hope Shining Blue. These are all the amazing survivors and the models, and I'm there represented, and Dawn, our great friend Dawn, and Nancy, and just all these beautiful faces. Samantha, some have been guests on my podcast, future guests coming up for season 4. So just beyond thrilled of the work that we're all doing, and I'm so glad we're all aligned. So thank you.
Let's
I just got on my soapbox for a little bit, but thank you, Neil.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Let's celebrate this. Let's take a moment,
Oh,
because
Mhm.
Hope Shining Blue, I had a chance to meet Scott at the event, and I put this on my website. You can see the URL at the bottom, neilparekh.org/Hope Shining Blue. Some of the information on the awardees. Candace won the Thrive Award that night.
Yep.
You can see some of the pictures from the event. And if you scroll down, I want to make sure these are the survivors who walked
Mhm.
the runway, who were
Yes.
just beautiful, and you can see their confidence. But nobody owned the runway like Candace Sanchez celebrating.
such a
Absolutely.
good time.
I mean, just look at
Mhm.
that, right? And even more so, and this is Candace. I'm going to embarrass you now, because to me, I had such a great time at this event, taking these pictures, putting this page together. Um,
Mhm.
this is what I want people to see. This is what a thriver looks like. That is just that's what people need to see.
Yes.
This is where you can go, and we're all at different parts in on this journey. Um, and that's one of the things that we've talked about on the show on this year, this season 3. I'm kind of fully aware that everyone's at a different spot on the journey, a different point on that road. And I think back to Michael Kaplinkalair. I think of all the guests we've had, he was, I think, at the earliest stage of the journey. I would put him kind of earlier than me. Other people we've had have given TED Talks, have been interviewed in the media, have written books, plays. They've been long-term advocates. Scott, I would say that in terms of from hearing about it, I mean, you went from 0 to 60. You
Thank you.
started this journey and then just took off like a shot over the course of the last several months. Um, but this is what it's all about. It's all about getting to the point where you can be thriving and really helping people in whatever
Mhm.
way is possible, whether it's writing a
Mhm.
book, whether it's going to the hospital like you're doing,
Mhm.
Scott, or serving with these organizations. One of the things that really stood out for me, Kenneth Rogers Jr., our second guest,
Mhm.
um, what he mentioned with this podcast and with these shows, it doesn't matter who watches it or who hears it
Right.
the day it's released or in the first week. It's out there in the world. We're putting good content, good information out there in the world.
Mhm.
This is going to be out there. Somebody's going to watch it and listen to it, whether it's on the audio podcast on Candace's page, or it's on Facebook, Twitter,
Mhm.
LinkedIn, YouTube, my website, however people find it. Someone will find it at a time when they need it.
I can speak to that. The
Yes.
And
Candace, the so you released our this episode 0 in like January 2nd, I think it was, and I'm on Reddit, which is most honestly, it's meant to be anonymous. All right, but I also the it's like I was on one of the Reddit. A person had made a post that they were struggling with talking to a family member about what had happened to them by an uncle, because the brother of this person was growing closer to this uncle but didn't know. And they were so, you could just hear the pain, and what, even just in the words that they wrote, you could hear it. And I reached out through the DMs and so forth because, and I said, hey, I know we're anonymous, but I said, if you think there might be value in listening, this just came out 2 weeks ago. And I said, there, if you might find value in this for yourself, give it a listen. And she did. And the response I got from her was just, it's heartbreaking. I think, I don't know if I shared it with you or not, but it's just, she said, no one ever spoke to me like that. No one ever gave me, everyone said, fake it till you make it. Or I buried it. There was no support for me. And she heard your podcast with me at a time in her life that there was great uncertainty. And she said, and I'll forget what she wrote. It says, I wish I can share my story as powerful as you did someday. But it was right there at that moment when it's a person who heard it when they needed it. And we put that out there.
Yeah,
Great
Scott,
example.
yeah, it's a great example. If you wouldn't mind, maybe a snippet, right? Just maybe
It-
pare down your story, just who hurt you, how they hurt, just if you want to give
sure,
us a brief little, just so
sure.
the audience and listeners can understand your background a little bit.
Um, Essentially, the short version is, I was molested by two of my mother's boyfriends at the ages of 11 and 12. One of them liked me to touch him, and another one liked to take pictures of me. And this was in the age of Polaroid, so it's not like digital or anything along those lines. And the person who actually liked to take pictures, and for the life of me, I will never understand why, confessed to my mother. And you expect at least your mother or a parent to be your most ardent supporter. And she basically said, I forgave him, so you have to as well. And that was the beginning of 35 years of bearing. And I spoke to the wall in our episode. It just became a cycle. I would start things knowing I would never finish them. Thought I gained power only for a seemingly insignificant event to take all that power away. It showed itself as I could never stay at a job for more than 3 years because I did not feel deserving of growth. It caused a failed marriage. It caused a failed business. It caused, all of this was present for me. And it was part of the bearing. When you bury something, it does come back. And you may not recognize it as, hey, that's what I buried. No, it represents to yourself as failures or continuing failures in your life, which now lead to the imposter syndrome. Because I had 35 years of failure of all these things. Why am I suddenly able to speak to or that's the thought that occurs occasionally. Like when I take the next step, it's like, why am I doing this? Do I really deserve this? Or am I really capable of making this difference for people? And I have this, it's one thing I told myself when I began the healing journey. One of the things that I experienced, I had like one little moment of success, but it was enough that suddenly it was like, wait a minute, I actually can do something. And as success breeds success, you begin, and eventually it becomes habit. And it's not like I am successful in the world, I'm suddenly a billionaire or something. No, the success of knowing you can accomplish when for a lifetime you couldn't.
Yeah.
Scott, we've talked about imposter syndrome on the show
Mhm,
a few times. We've talked about
mhm.
some of the mental health challenges and kind of the connections, that survivors exhibit. My question for you, and kind of it's reflecting on my own experience as well. Um, I actually, and I don't know if we've actually talked about this yet, Candace, but we might have. For a number of years, I always knew about what had happened to me. Really briefly, it was a neighbor that had a Cub Scout project, quote unquote. He came to my door and said, "Hey, I have a Cub Scout project to do. Can you help?" We went into a downstairs room, and he proceeded to abuse me. and I didn't know what was going on because I was 7. And the only reason it came to light, there's a pun in there somewhere, is because we had left the light on in my dad's office where we were. And when he came home, he's like, why were you in my office? I mean, it wasn't like a forbidden thing, just like there was no reason for me to be there. Oh, yeah, so and so came over. He had a Cub Scout project to do. We did this and this and this and this. Like I was just using words. I didn't know what I was saying. Obviously, everything blew up after that. But for years, I mean, I had never buried the experience. I always knew about it, but I for a number of years, I'd say into college and after, I always thought that, wow, I had this experience, but it didn't impact me the way that abuse and
Mhm.
assault and rape have impacted other people in terms of the mental health and the issues. And it wasn't really until later in life and particularly through some of the interviews we've done, some of the podcasts we've done, to see how imposter syndrome and workaholism and perfectionism all come from that experience. My question to you, Scott, with that setup, when you were describing those years of failure, and I use that word in quotes because I
I
certainly
know.
don't
Yep.
want to
Yep. Yep.
endorse that idea, but those struggles, um, did you trace it back to the
No.
abuse history, or
Nope.
how did you
No.
get to that point where you understood the root of it?
Um. Actually, it was the work of Landmark that actually I've mentioned that did that, as because as I went through the forum, they talk about the things that make that create us, so to speak. And as they ask you to kind of look at defining events in your life, and it was kind of this 2 plus 2 moment suddenly added up, where the recognition that wait a minute, all of these things, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. I could suddenly see the line between um, the events then and that progression through time where all of these things, it just kept happening. And it was, the moment I described to you in the podcast with the breakdown that I experienced in the shower after the first 3 days. It was that moment when the burden was just too much and I didn't want to carry it anymore. And that was the moment when the choice was made. Maybe it wasn't like, I'm going to be better, but not just that choice that something was going to be different.
I think it's just that realization, right? It's
Hmm.
just like it's just a
Hmm.
realization of that's why this is like it's just like you said, you 2 plus 2, you do the math, but it's like it's just
Hmm.
this your mind is wide open. I remember being in therapy and I was blaming all my problems, like my relationship with the father of my kids with Randy, you know,
Hmm.
he doesn't want me, he doesn't love me, he doesn't this, he doesn't that. And then when I went to my therapist, she's like, "You're blaming Randy for a lot, but like what is it like what do you base your relationships on? And like what has happened to you in your past?" Like never realized about my
Hmm.
trauma. And when I really
Yeah.
peeled back the layers and the onion, right, as they say, and I started talking about my childhood, and my therapist said, "Candace, you don't even know what a healthy, loving you were manipulated, you were groomed, you were, these behaviors that you're describing, you don't want Randy to talk to people, you don't want Randy to do this, you don't, it just these traits that I was exhibiting and that I was demonstrating." She's like, "That's not healthy."
Hmm.
And then she said, "Then you wonder why Randy's upset with you, because you're exposing now your children to this man that is still kind of like in your life, but not in your life."
Hmm.
And again, it was like kind of this whole fiasco of like, oh my God. And I wasn't ready to tell my story at that time. Randy wanted to be the voice of for me before I was ready to be my voice. And we struggled with that for years until I disclosed to my mom after my second daughter was born. So I completely feel it's that realization, that moment, that aha moment, that's just the light bulb goes off and it
Yeah.
connects all the dots
Yep.
to why you are the way you are, why you thought the way you thought. And then you're like, okay, I need to fix this. I need to
Hmm.
heal from this.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know I can remember the value of a good cry. It sounds how I can explain. But after that breakdown in the shower, I had to rush, catch a train back to Racine because I was in downtown Chicago. Caught the Amtrak, and I had about an hour of time just to say it. And it was, I don't know how to, it was the most peaceful I believe I'd ever felt in my life, because it had the dam had broken. I didn't have to hold it back anymore. And suddenly there was peace because it wasn't being held anymore. I had given it up. Obviously there's still the work of healing to do, but it had broken, the dam had broken, and there was no going back. And that was very, very powerful. That moment of peace is something I hold on to, because that was the beginning of a journey, and it's not there for everybody, but it was for me.
I need to take a deep breath.
Mm,
That's how I feel every time
yeah.
we're having these conversations. It's just like more healing happens even within myself, and Scott, I know we've talked before. We've talked, on
Hmm.
being on the board together, being at retreats, and just the work that you were doing, and just having these peer groups, and I hope to attend one, one of these second and fourth
Hmm.
Fridays. I hope to attend one. But I'm looking forward to being a true advocate. I signed up, I did the training. I'm actually, if you guys know this or not, but finally have reported my
Yeah,
abuse, even though it's past the
Really?
statute of
you
limitations. I
did.
finally took that step, and I have reported. That was huge for me. I think for me, doing the training, the light bulbs, right? To report or not to report, that's the question, right?
Hmm.
And so thinking about my younger self and the fear that was instilled in me to now being an adult and not being afraid. I mean, you still have fear, but it's a different type of fear. But it's just yeah, I finally did it, and I'm proud of myself. And the question was like, well, why now?
Thank you.
And my thing is, it's because I don't know if these perpetrators will continue to perpetrate, and if they do, I need to have this on record for that.
Yeah,
For I pray there's no other victims, but if there
sure.
is,
Right.
I'm trying to protect them, that next
Yes.
person. And so I did it because that's truly what I feel in the role and where I'm at in my life. This is what needs to happen. But it took a lot for me to get to this point. A lot of
Candace,
work, a lot of healing.
Candace, I've known you, or since I've known you, I know this has been present for you for a while. I just need to say I am so very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
And like I said, the question was, you can't do anything about that. I'm like, I'm not asking to do anything about this. I just
Right.
want it undocumented,
Hmm.
because in the event something were to happen to someone else, and this is just reported on paper in your files, in your
Hmm.
notes, wherever you put it, on a system, whatever. I don't care how long ago it happened. Okay. It happened. Here's a copy of my book. This is the work that I'm doing. This is my business card. This is my podcast. I talk about this. This is what the work that I do. And I'm
Hmm.
asking you, please, to document this to these two perpetrators that did this to me when I was an innocent little girl. This
Yes.
was taken from me. I need, I never, it's past the statute of limitations. I get that. I understand. I'm not looking for civil charges or nothing.
Right.
Just put it on paper to protect whoever. Pray to God there's no one else. But it's an
Hmm.
obligation now. Like after taking this training, like I said, opened up my eyes to these laws. And I was so angry when I realized like how many
Hmm.
times I was violated, and just the whole felony class actions and all the words, right? I was like, and one of the advocates that was in the training was like, "Why are you angry?" And I'm like, "Because as an adult, you don't learn that stuff when you're a kid. You're not taught those things, and that's what we're trying to change, is to inform, educate, to prevent. These
Yep.
children need to understand that this is not okay. And yes, you don't want to harm and hurt your families, but these people don't deserve to be hurting you the way they're hurting you. This is violation of your right,
Hmm.
your physical body, your right."
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
Which
thank you.
which
It's hard.
training was this again, Candace?
Say that again?
Which training was this again?
Through BeLEAF Survivors, they have an advocate training program. So
Mm-hmm.
I signed up because being a board member and being a survivor or thriver, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like I was curious. Scott had recommended that a lot of the board members maybe should take the training to understand the other side, right? To understand
Mm-hmm.
what advocates do to help survivors. And I was like, you know what? I would like to take the training. And part of the training is you make the decision if you truly want to go to the hospital and help. If
Mm-hmm.
someone is sexually assaulted, you go into the hospital and you help them through that process. And then also taking the phone for a 24-hour time period, a crisis hotline phone. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have dedicated that now that I've taken the training, I want to step into the role really to see the other side, to be there on the other side, to
Mm-hmm.
help survivor through that process. And so I will be signing up for the next calendar year. I'll just be doing it once a month, one 24-hour period. I think I'm going to do the first weekend of the month, however that falls. But I'm going to do that for a full year just to gain that experience and to help others. Again, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
part of, again, my healing journey, and me taking that legal step, that course of action, I think has also empowered me even more.
Mm-hmm. Can I put a plug then for BeLEAF is always looking for advocates. They are the training is provided free of charge to those who wish to step in. Obviously, this is the Racine area or slightly Kenosha, Wisconsin. However, if there is a person who feels that they want to make a difference for others, this is an amazing way to be there for at the moment. That could be one of the worst moments of someone's life.
And I'll just put a plug, no matter where anyone's listening from, you
Yes.
could do a search on Google and find out
Mm-hmm.
local advocacy groups in your area. You can do that as well. And again, honestly, like again, this podcast is for those that are looking to heal. This is a way to get some just to see other survivors again living and thriving and still healing no matter how old
Yeah.
it is. Your trauma, you
Mm-hmm.
can heal from that. You can turn it in from trauma to triumph. I turned it in from my pain to my purpose, my passion. Took my mess, turned it into my message. But BeLEAF Survivors, Scott and I are both board members of this organization, and again, it's based here in Wisconsin, Racine, Wisconsin. And that's the city that I grew up. And, I did not know of any of these resources growing up, but I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that this resource is there. And now that I can be a part of it, aligning my personal story to an organization that's doing the work.
Their
Yes.
website is BeLEAF Survivors, BeLEAF Survivors.org. I want to take a moment and just check. They have two programs listed on their
Yes.
website: sexual assault
Mm-hmm.
services and stop child abuse and neglect. Is this
Yes.
the SAS program that you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yes, that is what that is. Sexual assault services. That is, we as advocates and volunteer advocates. That is really only one aspect of what they do, but we are the immediate. We are the first people, feet on the ground, when when something happens to someone. Um, the helpline, the boy, you can take. I've taken calls at 3 a.m. I'm sure and you're just there for a person when they could be they could just be having a bad day or they could really be in a breakdown point, but you're there for them. You are an ear when they need it, and the power of those calls is incredible. I've had an opportunity to I've been doing this long enough that I've actually heard repeat callers and stuff. My first call I ever took was this person who had no skills whatsoever. I mean, for coping. They were basically a blubbering blob of mess. And back in about April of this year, I had a chance. I took another call from them, and the difference was, they did the work of healing. They're not perfect. The journey never ends. Just so we're clear, the journey of healing never ends, but we gain strength as we go through it. But this person who was just a blob of mess said, "Hey, I'm having a bad day, and I've got a situation coming up next week where I've got family coming that were aware of everything going on for her, but never really acknowledged it. How can I cope with this? Can we make a plan?" Holy cow, what a difference. All right. This is the value of what we do as advocates and what we do. This is a person who took power back in their life.
And as you can see, from the website, they offer professional therapy, support
Yep.
groups, information referrals, but also family advocacy, legal advocacy,
hmm
and community education. Sounds like incredible work
It
that they're
is.
doing.
And the staff is incredible. The dedication they have is, if you've ever met anybody who works in a nonprofit and has passion, stand aside because they're going to make things happen.
Yeah.
You mentioned the staff. We'll just share
hmm
a
That
little bit.
Karen,
Some of the folks who are behind it, Karen,
hmm
and
Sam,
there's Sam,
Samantha,
the program
yep,
director.
hmm
They have rural
Vicky,
services, Vicky,
Vicky,
yep,
Carrie
Carrie.
Wilder.
Carrie,
She's amazing. Love her. Amazing.
Annabelle, love Annabelle,
Annabelle. Yeah. Oh my God. Krista.
Krista.
Krista is, you mentioned the family advocate. She is the one who works with particularly sometimes children or families of children. That's a tough role to take, and she does amazing at it.
Trinae.
Trinae. Yep.
It's not often that we get a chance to lift up the staff for
Yeah.
organizations like this.
Absolutely, and this
Right.
is great.
Yep. Gail.
Gail.
And that goes to the SCAN program, which is Stop Child Abuse and Neglect. That is an education program where they go into schools to work. And Luna, I love Luna,
Luna.
to educate children when neglect or abuse is happening. Children, they don't know different. To them,
They don't know the words. They don't know,
right. But
they have to be educated.
like you said in your book, this was my norm.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing for children. It's an opportunity to tell children, no, this is not the norm, and an opportunity to speak out or speak to a safe person to create change in their life.
And this is why, at a young age, so I have a daughter who is 10. And with my experience, as I mentioned earlier, when I was abused, I had no idea what was going on. We could have been playing with Matchbox cars.
Yeah.
Right? We could have been playing with Star Wars figures. That's how I described, I narrated what happened with the same kind of, dispassion. So very early on, we taught our daughter, the basics, but with a little bit more of a intention behind it around good touch, bad touch, and who is appropriate. Family members, mom and dad, the doctor. If there are others in our circle who we trust. But also, try to give her that sense that if somebody touches you in a way that you're not comfortable, that you should feel comfortable saying something either to us or another trusted adult. It doesn't have to be us. We wanted her to be close enough to her aunts so she could speak to them as well. And it's great to see the work that BeLEAF is doing, specifically for young children.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I just have to say too, just when we did the walk together for Milwaukee for EndCAN, we, the money that we raise creates community grants to help the organizations that are doing exactly what BeLEAF is doing. And BeLEAF was able to, they were awarded the $7,500 grant last year, and this year the award dollar amount is going to be $12,500. So all the organizations that participated in what we call our Together Pavilion, that are doing the work in the communities, that are supporting survivors, child abuse and neglect, get to apply for the grant. And then, it goes through the whole review panel, and then it's, the grantees are awarded for the next year. So, we'll have to see how that all pans out this year. And but yeah, this walk is important because it's all about the the survivors. It's all about the awareness, the prevention, and really this is a celebration, right? Just the way that the Hope Shining Blue was a celebration, the walk and together, it's a celebration. It's coming together as community to bring that cultural awareness around this topic. So I'm grateful to be the event lead for the Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Kathy, who was a previous guest on our podcast here was representing Columbus, and then Lori and her team purchased the Denver, Colorado, and I know Milwaukee raised. We reached our goal of 15,000. I think it was over. It was like almost 16,000.
Mhm.
And then I believe Columbus was 50 plus. And
Yeah.
then I'm not sure what Denver raised, but I'm sure they did amazing as well. So it's just so exciting to know all the work that's coming right back to the communities that we're serving.
Yep.
So very proud of that.
This is Lori Poland's memoir, I Live Here. It was a powerful episode we had with
Oof.
her
Mhm.
earlier in the year, a couple months ago now. It was great. Candace, we had a chance, both with Lori and Kathy, to not just hear about their work and hear about EndCAN, but also to review some of the the learnings we had from the earlier guests on this year's season 3. So this was great, and I just want to tell you how proud I am of the work that both of you are doing, and I'm thrilled that we get a chance to highlight groups like
Mhm.
EndCAN and BeLEAF, Wakasa, and NAMI
Mhm.
as well. They just do some great work.
Yes. And I'd like to just transition a couple of things I know before, probably wrapping up soon here. But one thing that I know we've talked about is a common theme throughout our season 3 and a lot of the other seasons of season 1, season 2, forgiveness. Scott, where are you with forgiveness? But I want to
Oh,
talk a little bit about forgiveness because I know that theme has come up
mhm.
often on our
Yes.
series this year.
So first, ask the easy questions. No, actually, your podcast challenged me to really look at my feelings and my thoughts on forgiveness. And with the work that I did with Landmark, something that, because one of the things I learned in Landmark is that shame lives only in one place, and that's up here. And as well as guilt lives only in one place, that's up here. And that was kind of the beginning, is the realization for forgiveness is really, at least in what I've discovered for myself, is you as the person who was hurt. Forgiveness is the giving up of the attachment to the pain and the suffering that they have caused you. Because as long as you're holding on to that, it takes power from you, and it it has the power over you, and you can't, and you don't get to grow because it's still festering. So forgiveness for me was the giving up of the attachment to the pain. And true forgiveness doesn't mean it doesn't pop up or anything along those lines, but true forgiveness is kind of a mandate that you no longer have the right to let it have power over you. Now, one of the things, the big challenge that came from when we talked about forgiveness for me was the realization, because society as a whole, from what I've seen, they lump forgiveness not only, think about it, it's used as, oh, I'm forgiving the other person. In a sense, that just didn't rest well, because, common perceptions, hey, I forgive you. Oh, everything's hunky dory. Time to move on. It's all right. We're all happy now. I had the realization that forgiveness lives with me and my pain, but for the other person, the perpetrator or the person who has caused you hurt, first off, forgiveness can only truly be granted if there is, or not, it's not even forgiveness, I'm using my wrong word here, but the other person, if they are not coming to you with a true sense of repentance, or, if they come to you and say, I'm sorry, but forget it, it's not there. All right. Or if they say I'm sorry and there's any words after that in that same sentence, it's not an apology. What if a person really has repentance or is carrying guilt for what they did to you, if they come to you and say, can you forgive me? The real word that they're asking is, can you absolve me, which is give permission to them to forgive themselves. Because again, forgiveness lives here. And for them, then it's the forgiveness. Can they forgive themselves for the pain they did to you? And absolution is the granting to that person of the grace to forgive themselves. And an important point here is that the two can be mutually exclusive. Forgiveness is with you, but absolution may not come. In the case of my mother, even like I mentioned, I got the call tonight or today that she is going downhill. And mentally, she just has not had the faculties for well over a year or more. And the realization is there that the acknowledgement of the pain she caused me or the recognition of it will never come. So there will not be absolution, but forgiveness still lives. I have forgiven her because I have given up the attachment to the pain that was caused by her, which has allowed me to survive and to thrive. And I can say also something interesting. Even though I said, in a sense, the adult relationship with my mother is complete, because the pain that was there, it's just never going to, there is going to be no recognition of it. I had an experience with my brother as we were talking about my mother, but I had the experience for the first time in many, many, many years to experience compassion for my mother. And that compassion comes from the realization that there was a little girl who culturally grew up at a time when there was not many options for young women, but as well as had something happen to her. The family does not know, it's there, the family knows something, but nothing more. There was something that occurred to this wonderful, smart, intelligent little girl that turned her into the angry and toxic person who abused myself and my brothers. And the compassion I feel is the wish that there was a way to heal that inner child or the little child so that she could have had the possibilities that were basically denied her by the actions of someone else. And that is my wish. Why we need to do this work to protect children, as you said, why you reported. We don't want other children to go through the same and have that lost possibility of life.
Yeah.
And
Forgiveness is huge.
Yes.
And
So
you never
thank you.
forget. Yeah. You
No,
never forget.
no.
The chapter in my book, Forgive, Never Forget. I mean, I did forgive my abuser. He actually told me he was sorry, and there was no but afterwards. He never admitted it to my mom, and I didn't care, but I got it. And not a lot of survivors will get that, right? But I got it. And I just kind of, again, I think doing that inner child work and writing that letter to my younger self for the video that was displayed at the Hope Shining Blue event, that was even tougher than writing the book. But I remember realizing, and even through the training, is that forgiving yourself is the big first step, right? For that, it was not my fault. I did not ask for this to happen. I did not deserve this to happen. This was not my fault. And I think I now understand that more than I ever have before. And I can say that with conviction that it's not our fault. It is not your fault. It's, what happened to you. Again, we are so much more than what happened to us. It's what you do with that and how you transform that and transcend, right, to that next stage of your life. So Scott, thank you for sharing. I know Neil has a thought or two on forgiveness.
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times now, and Scott, I appreciate your distinction or kind of clarification, the difference between forgiveness and absolution. That's something new that we haven't actually discussed on the show before. More than one person has shared, and I think of Nathan Spiteri in particular, one of our earlier guests, I think back in March, talking about how important forgiveness is, for it's almost at kind of at a midpoint in the journey. You have to do a certain amount of healing to be able to forgive, and then once you forgive, you can keep going after that. And if folks were watching, and we were small in the corner when you brought that up, I kind of let out a huge sigh.
I saw that.
I was just
I
like,
saw that.
a little bit, and it wasn't certainly not reflective of your experience or story, but I'm just so not there. I'm just so far from that point.
May I offer something?
Please.
That's okay. It is okay to be where you are. And the request is only to continue on the journey. That's the request. It is okay to not be ready to give it up or give up the attachment. But as you do the work of healing, the real interesting thing is, as the work of healing progresses, the need to hold on to it becomes less.
Yeah.
And suddenly there may be the one day where all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. You may suddenly discover that what this thing you were hanging on to isn't even, it's evaporated. Just continue to do the work of healing. And that is my request to you, because with the work, if you don't do the work, you can't get better. I'm sorry. And you know what, Neil, I am so sorry that you have to do this work because of the actions of someone else.
Yeah.
That's spoken like a true advocate. If I don't know one, Scott's the one, because those are the perfect words that we learned in training, is having those words of comfort and to tell you that it's okay to be right where you are, Neil.
Yeah.
This journey has been part of your healing.
Yes.
And again, this has been an amazing journey, and to know, like, you speak so candidly and open to where you are, and that's completely okay with all of us. And I think that's, if anything, that's the big learning and lessons learned that I keep getting from every single person. And every time we talk about the forgiveness, that aspect, the theme, how it just keeps coming up. And there's a lot of survivors that will never, and that's okay too. I've had some of my guests say, "You crazy." Nope, never, and that's okay. Like, and so it's just, we just support each other where we are in the journey. So
I think it's
I
the dual
want
message,
to
the dual message of, and we'll close with this, Candace, the dual message of it's okay to be where you are. And I want to think of this, I've approached this from a perspective of I'm learning as we go, and I'm learning from all our guests. I'm hoping that there are viewers out there who are not hoping that there are people in my shoes, but that they're at, in that level of experience, that they're also learning from our guests. And then I'm kind of representing them, the dual message of it's okay to be where you are on the journey, at whatever point, and acknowledging that there is hard work ahead.
Yes.
And whenever you're ready for it, and whenever you can marshal the wherewithal to do it, there is some power, some value in going through those steps, those processes, to get to work through all of this. And thank you, Scott, for that encouragement. Candace, you've been teaching me for the past year and more. So, I'm going to continue to thank you. But I think that's a great segue in terms of how we want to close, how we've closed each of our episodes, Candace. So I'll give you the floor.
Yes. So we always end up closing, the last chapter of my book was called Full Circle Blessings. And so we end with gratitude, right? And I just would like to ask Scott and then Neil, and what are you most grateful for? So I'll start with Scott, and then we'll do Neil, and then I'll wrap it up.
I am most grateful. Actually, Candace, I cannot be more grateful for giving me my voice and the recognition of learning that I do have a voice, and B, it can become powerful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Scott. Neil?
I will share. This is, this entire experience of putting this together, of meeting with the survivors, of doing these interviews. As much as I said just a few minutes ago that I'm not there yet, I don't see forgiveness. I do know, though, how much I've grown in the past year, and how much I've learned, how much more comfortable I am with this topic, with myself. And I am forgiving myself a little bit more each time. And so, Candace, I continue to thank you and this community that you've built, for the support that you're giving me and other survivors. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, again, I just appreciate I'm most grateful for, just being able to do this important work. It has been a journey. It is a lifelong healing process. We continue to heal, but what I think I'm most grateful for is just having others be on this journey with me and the people that I've met along my journey. It takes a village, and there were so many people that believed in me before I believed in myself. And so I'm a product of the village that supported me, rallied around me, hugged me, cheered me on when I was in my dark times. And so just for that, I'm grateful. And I'm just so grateful for everyone that has tuned in and listened and watched with Unspoken Conversation with Candace with season 3. I'm going to continue this important work. I will continue to work with Neil on future projects. I know Scott and I are working on BeLEAF. So, I mean, stay tuned for
Mhm.
lots more to come. I'm looking at bringing a conference to the city of just to Wisconsin. Don't know where yet, but looking for maybe Digimentors to help produce that as a virtual event, as well as maybe having it, in person. So just again, I am going to continue to do this important work because it's needed. It's a validation of celebration of survivors and the work that we do, and really for any of those survivors that we've lost along the way. They didn't have their voice, or maybe they just couldn't stand the pain, but I will stand with them as well, and make sure we acknowledge those that didn't make it here. And that is a true statement. People take their lives, they go down that path of destruction. And so I'm just grateful to do the work and grateful to honor all of survivors. Um, so yeah, so thank you both. Thank you, Neil, for being my co-host. Thank you, Scott, for being a great guest, for kicking their
Okay.
season off, and for sharing the transformation that you've done from 0 to
Well,
60 is what I think Neil called that. So
yeah.
great job.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Candace and I will just wrap up
Yes.
real quick, but
Okay.
appreciate it. Candace, oh my God,
Oh,
what
yay.
uh,
Oh,
what an episode! And it was great to hear from Scott, and I really loved this example of him being your 0 episode guest. This kind of bridge between your audio podcast and the season 3 dedicated to male survivors, and then being able to bring him on, after his journey and everything he's learned, and his growth. I mean, how so much so inspirational in terms of
yes.
his story.
Yes. Very inspirational, transformational. And again, like Lori, you transcend, right? And when he was awarded the Unspoken Hero Award, and he gave, a speech, it was pretty much a mic drop moment for Scott. I'll never forget that.
Really,
Yes, it was. The words that he used to describe his journey, and just basically how he talked about he's a thriver. Like, we go from victim to survivor to thriver, that having that mentality of, I'm a thriver, I'm thriving in life, I'm doing the work, and now I'm a voice for others, right? And him, stepping out and doing his YouTube channel, and just
yeah,
again going out into the public eye, and the work that he's doing with BeLEAF, the work with NAMI. I mean, to get that done within a short time frame, and to show his commitment and conviction for the survivor community, again, transformation at its finest. And that's what, and again, we're so much more than what happened to us. And that's, to me, also, like when we say he went from 0 to 60, he did that and then some. So
sure,
just so amazed at the work that
sure.
he's done in this time frame.
So
And
we
Neil,
have,
you've
yeah,
been a great host, a co-host.
thank you.
And, we've gone from this to live stream to back to, so I honestly, just everything that you Digimentors has provided me for this season, I can't thank you enough. So I'm also, like I said, just want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being on this journey with me.
You're you're very welcome. We have one last episode for season 3 before we wrap this up. It's not the end of Unspoken Conversations with Candace. You're going to continue again in 2024
Correct.
with a whole new series of episodes. But the our work will continue. We will stay in touch. We will find more ways to reach out to people, to help people, and to grow ourselves. Even in this episode, we showed how we're kind of each making our own progress, and learning and thriving.
Yes.
So absolutely incredible. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, for watching this pre-recorded episode or listening to the podcast. And we look forward to seeing you again next month.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.